And the first item will be to, let me call the roll. Let's have a roll call to make sure that we have a quorum.
Okay. Armando Cisneros.
Here.
Efrain Sanchez.
Present.
Ms. Ana Sainz.
Here.
Michael Gutierrez. Jesus Rodriguez.
Present.
Luis Castillo.
Here.
Richard Geisler. Israel Reina.
Here. And of course, I'm here. We have a quorum?
Yes,
Then I will ask everyone to stand, please, and have Mr. Rodriguez lead us with the pledge of allegiance.
Judge, would it be okay if Mr. Castillo does it today as a veteran for him to?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, I'd be honored. Here's your pen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. You're welcome. Take this.
This is in fact a great country with our rights, the Bill of Rights, the freedom of speech. And so that said, is there any citizen comments? Anyone has signed up to make comments?
An invisible man?
The next item is the approval of the minutes. I just read them and I found them to be pretty accurate, but do you want a formal reading, or are there any, do you want to make a motion to amend them or to approve them as submitted without a formal reading?
I so move.
I'll second it.
Motion to approve the minutes as submitted without a formal reading. There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. The next item is item number 4, staff reports. Presentation given by staff on proposed charter amendments recommended by department directors with possible action.
The department directors submitted some recommendations. They wanted the Charter Commission to discuss Section 12.04, which deals with nepotism. The way it's currently written, it says anyone that's part of any board, and they'd make the recommendation that it be changed to any only rulemaking boards in regards to that one. I don't know if you guys want to add that to the agenda to discuss Section 12.04.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you changed it to what?
To, right now, the way that it's written in the charter, anyone that's related to someone that's on a board can't be hired by the city. So to change it from just boards to only rulemaking boards, which I believe are like the Municipal Civil Service Board, Planning and Zoning, to keep those where they wouldn't be able to be hired, but to allow anyone else. If you're related to someone on a board, that shouldn't.
The city council wants that to be a change to the charter?
This was recommended by department directors,
Okay.
not city council.
So, role-making boards, which ones are those?
The rulemaking boards, Planning and Zoning, the Board of Adjustment, Ethics, and Municipal Civil Service.
So,
Those are rulemaking boards?
Rulemaking boards, yes.
rule-making boards, okay. So anybody that's, only any other boards, a person on that board can be doing business with the city?
No,
Not
it's nepotism.
hiring.
Nepotism,
Hiring.
Okay.
hiring a brother or sister.
So, in other words, it'll be weakening what we have now, right? Because it'll be less restrictive.
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, the city wants to, I'm not in favor of that.
Or to discuss it,
Yeah,
to discuss
okay.
that.
So,
Neither am I.
all right. what section of the charter is that fall
This
under,
is
please?
section 12.04.
12.04. Okay. I don't have my charter.
What? I'm sorry?
04.
12.0.
I can read it to you.
Yes.
It's section 12.01, personal financial interest. Every officer and employee of the city shall be held to the highest standards of conduct and ethics in the performance of the duties and responsibilities to the city. And they shall not engage in any conduct or activity that is in conflict with or that has the appearance of a conflict with their duties to the city or its best interest. Conflicts with the interests of the city include, but are not limited to, financial conflicts of interest, the misuse of confidential information, and the use of city property for other than city purposes. Any violation of this standard of conduct shall cause a forfeiture of office and/or employment with the city. Any contract entered into as a result of the violation of this standard of conduct or that violates standard of conduct is voidable. So what is it that you're asking?
It said nepotism.
Nepotism.
I think you read.
12.04.
They want, they,
12.04?
Yes.
12.04.
On the next one.
The very bottom.
Okay, no person related within the second degree by affinity or within the third degree by consanguinity to the mayor, any council member, any elected city official, city manager, or any member of any city board or commission shall be appointed to any office, position, clerkship, or other position with the city. This prohibition shall not apply, however, to any person who shall have been continuously employed by the city for a period of 2 years or more prior to the election of the mayor, council member, or elected official, or to the appointment of the city manager or member of a board or commission related to such appointee in the prohibited degree. Can you repeat again how you're asking or recommending
So
that
the-
be changed?
Department directors recommended either removing the prohibition being related to board or commission members. If they're not, if they're a part of a rulemaking commission, then it should apply. But if they're not, then remove that part so that they can hire people that are qualified. The only reason that they can't be hired is because of their relationship to that board member.
Was there any rationale provided for that request?
It's refusing people that are qualified. That has happened in the past where they've had to refuse people because they're related to someone who's on a board and they refuse to resign, or let's say they're on the Commission for Women and they're applying to work with the city. And they're highly qualified, but they can't be given that position because of their relationship to that board member.
If you try and define within the third degree, who would come within the third degree? Of blood or marriage?
I don't think it says here. I couldn't see.
Cousins. Nieces,
A
nephews.
son-in-law
Yeah.
would
That's
come
not
within
consequence.
the
No.
second degree or third degree? A cousin, a second cousin?
The second year is fourth. No?
Because, I'm not sure, but anytime someone that's related to a council member or the mayor or the city manager gets retained or hired, it gives the appearance of impropriety.
I believe the comment that was made by the department director wasn't for mayors or council members. It's more for people that are on boards or commissions. So not changing the part with with city council or mayors, but changing it to only apply when it deals with board or commission members, only to rulemaking boards, not other boards.
You said that there's 4 rulemaking boards?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
How many non-rulemaking boards do we have? Is there
I'm not
more
sure.
than 10?
Yes, there's more than
8 or
10.
10.
Yes, there's more than 10.
I mean, there's a lot more
None.
non-rulemaking boards than
Rulemaking boards, yes.
And this is a request coming from directors and
Yes, from department directors.
not from the city council?
Not from the city council.
Planning and zoning comes within the rulemaking.
Yes, planning and zoning does.
What, if you, pardon my ignorance, what do you mean by rulemaking as compared to non-rulemaking? What distinguishes there?
So I want some of the boards, or they, like this board, you guys aren't making any rules. Some of them actually have to hand out some sort of ruling.
What kind of rules does the P and Z issue? Like,
So is
Some
it,
streets.
as opposed, I'm sorry.
I wanted to clarify, I want to understand.
Let me,
Advisory board would be the opposite of a
Yes.
rulemaking board?
Yes.
let me cut
Advisory
this,
board.
let me cut to the chase though here.
Yes.
This is under staff reports, and it doesn't give notice to the public that we're going to discuss that particular section of the charter. So I would, I would not want to take any action. We can hear the report, and maybe we can place it on the agenda for the next meeting, but this would not be an action item.
Not at this meeting, no.
Agreed.
I agree.
That's well said. Good point.
Go ahead, you have something else on this?
No, that's the only staff report.
Do you have any other item with regards to staff reports, any other thing that you wanted to present?
No.
Mr. Reyna?
I'd just like to have from them, a listing of all those boards and commissions that are considered rulemaking and why, and those that are not. I know that rulemaking is really the threshold for this type of thing. I mean, there could be influential, we're an influential commission.
Yes.
We propose city charter amendments that could impact any department and its employees and its resources and so forth. So I don't know that that's the threshold, that fine line, rulemaking versus non-rulemaking, so to speak. I think there's more to it than that.
But then I'll move on to the next item, which are the action items. And item A is proposed amendment to section 2.08, action requiring an ordinance. And I believe that's your baby, Mr. Cisneros. What do you want to say on that?
Thank you, Judge. My proposal would be to add to this section of the charter, section 2.08, action requiring an ordinance, a stipulation that would require an ordinance for the disbursements or allocation of the district priority funds, or as they just call discretionary funds, which at the present time is $500,000 for each council person. And to my knowledge, there is no charter provision for that. There is no ordinance for that. So there is nothing to control that process of them being allocated $500,000 every year. That's $4 million plus the mayor. So I think there should be at least something, and that is my proposal, that the charter require an ordinance. And the ordinance can be discussed by the council, and they can set the amount and an amendment, because San Antonio has an ordinance. They get $50,000 each. And anytime they want to change it, it has to go through the amendment process and discussions and all that. So let me give you an example. 2 years ago, the city manager made a recommendation of each council getting $300,000, And just like that, one of the councilmen said, no, I motion that we get $500,000. And everybody said aye, and that was it. So like within one minute, it had gone from $300,000 to $500,000. And that is, to me, it's a problem.
Per council member.
Only
That's per council member.
for councilman.
And the mayor
A year.
gets more, right?
And mayor, I think he gets about the same, I'm not entirely sure. And the subsequent year, after that example I gave, there was some traffic projects lined up, several $1 million worth, and the council, just in a one fell swoop, they decided to do away with those projects. For each council person for that year. So in other words, it points out to the need for some sort of more precise process, and that is my motion.
Mr. Zena?
I thought we had also expressed concern that those monies set aside for discretionary fund for these council members, that there be limitations on the use of those funds, that it's, that, do you really want to let it be done by ordinance? And they themselves are the ones, hold on.
Okay.
They're the ones, the council members are the ones making the ordinance. I think it should be like, the teeth should be, and the bite should be in the city charter.
I'll ask,
There are limitations.
there's no second, so let's just continue to discuss
Okay, sure.
this situation, see what we can come up with. Anybody else have some observations? Because I'm gonna have some strong observations on this, but I'll wait to hear from
I
the
thought
body.
our observations are pretty strong too.
If I may.
Mr. Rodriguez?
My feeling on that is that $500,000 is way too much. San Antonio with 2 million people and the budget so many more times bigger than this one, they have 50,000 and we have 500,000, 10 times more. It makes no sense to me. I would go along with Mr. Cisneros' recommendations, and then I would not want to see more than $50,000, and even then, for council member to spend at their discretion every year. $500,000 is way too much, and definitely a more structural process needs to be instituted, whereas right now, the sky's the limit. If they went from 300 to $500,000, next year it'll be $1 million.
Conceivably, it could be.
That needs a strict looking over and strict guidelines as far as that goes. And if it's necessary to amend the charter for that purpose, I would be in favor of it. I would be in favor of anything that would limit the disbursement of these monies by council members the way it is right now, because it seems that there's no control over it.
Exactly.
There's no control over it, and what may be important to one council member may not be important to another, and I don't think it's important to the city as a whole, and so that's an area that definitely needs to be more structured as far as the process.
Mr. Geisler?
A question, is there any limitations on how it can be spent or not spent on? Or?
From a previous presentation by the city attorney, it has to be brick and mortar, and then it has to be approved by the council.
Thank you.
Any other observations before
What
I?
is the history of the discretionary funds? Where did it start and how much were they allowed? How long ago? I guess Mr.
I
Cisneros.
don't know, but as you saw from the materials given to us by staff,
How did it balloon to 500?
it really does, trying to justify it in my mind, that I can see how some districts, because we have single-member districts, may be neglected. That the downtown area in the old days, used to have absolute control. So I know that like West Laredo, you go see, you see trash and it's this, everything is in disrepair, dilapidated, burned down houses that haven't been raised. I mean, it's just horrible. And so I can see how a councilman would want to have some discretionary funds to address some issues in his district without having to beg and approach the council. We have a city council, weak city council in the sense, or a strong city manager form of government. And so you have to trust your city manager to make the right calls, to set priorities. Where do you go with the limited funds that you have? In my view, there should be no discretionary funds for brick and mortar. None, zero. And we should have a prohibition against the council awarding themselves $500,000 to use at their pleasure. Why? And so my idea is, yes, like Mr. Rodriguez said, 50,000 discretionary funds to be used within the district, the council member's district, for city purposes. Off the top of my head, I don't know what that could be, but maybe trash pickup or removing a dilapidated house, where any number of problems that can arise that bedevil a particular district. But to, what is it, $500,000?
He gets more than the council.
400,
In any event,
4.5 million.
8 by 5, what is, $4 million?
4.5 million
4.5.
every year.
Give me a break.
Yes,
You know,
I told you.
the city manager could formulate a plan to do something really constructive with that money, but it's tied up with individual councilmen. Is that what we want? Do we want to say in the charter, there shall be no discretionary funds other than $50,000 every budget year? Food for thought. I may be off the deep end on this. I may be too conservative in that regard, but I'll hear your wishes.
Well, the power of dollar, it keeps going down, right? Minimum wage yesterday is not a living wage today. So, the dollar, power of the dollar is something that we have to keep in mind as well. I mean, how much can $50,000 do these days? How much? I mean, it's really gonna make a difference. It's gonna have some bang to it, right? Bucks from the bank, I mean, to get something really, important done. And yes, I think the issue has been that the allocation of resources to certain areas of town has been discriminatory. Some, and so the powerful usually have, I won't mention the killers, but I will.
Throw in that in.
They just got a choice, right, to develop
The show.
land because it's one of those neglected areas, So, I mean, that type of thing, is real, that's real politics in the real world. And so we need to think in terms of, my thinking, Judge, is that I don't have a problem with a discretionary fund. I have a problem with how they are able to use it, what they can use it for, right? And I think that unless we put those limitations on their use in the city charter, it's a free-for-all.
Well, one example that was given to me was, let's say, there's a street that's heavily traveled in a neighborhood, and the people speed on that street, and so the residents there get together and say, we want speed bumps, and it's not in the budget. Well, the individual council member could say,
Yeah.
I'll spend my discretionary funds on that. And so if the fund amount is too small, that's it for that year. You see?
If I may, I'm following what Mr. Ray is saying, and I'm following what you're saying, Judge. I think that the number is important, the number that we attach to each council member. But keep in mind that, Mr. Reyna, that it doesn't necessarily mean that if you need a project and it's an emergency and it's a safety hazard, like you said, a speed bump or something to hold back traffic, and it's a major artery, a major intersection, doesn't mean that you can't come and say, hey, I only have 50,000 for my district, but it requires 80,000. I don't think anybody say, no, let's everybody have, too bad, have accidents. I think the council will say, yes, we have to, it's something of urgency, and we are gonna allow the 30,000. That's what the council is for, and that's what I think Mr. Cisneros and we all are saying. Nobody's saying we don't have, the money is not gonna be, available for anybody. It's gonna be there, and the 500,000 that are currently there doesn't mean they're not gonna be there, they're gonna be there. But not individually. If somebody requires more or less, so be it. But if you're allocated 50,000 and there is an emergency, there is something of super, as you mentioned, a traffic hazard or something, I think the money will be there. The money we'll be able to discuss it and bring it forward and solve the problem, or put some attention to it. That's my opinion on that.
So Mr. Cisneros comes back to you after all this discussion.
But
With regards to an ordinance being required as to the discretionary funds.
yeah, I think that'd be the best thing to do, because like I said, the ordinance will spell out where the funding will come from and everything. The only reason that right now they say brick and mortar, because they've been selling bonds and using those bonds to fund the discretionary funds. And the bonds can only be used for brick and mortar, right? So that is why they say, but there is nothing in writing that says that, as far as the discretionary funds go. So we need to spell it out more precisely, is my point of why we need an ordinance.
You want to?
Were we going to get a list of
We do have a
of the projects that we got?
Yeah, we have to list.
It's in there.
Because I know of a neighborhood in the Heights that a couple of years ago, monies were spent by the council member for elaborate corner.
It's in there, it's in there.
It's in there?
$90,000.
That's
On
brick
one.
and mortar, I guess.
Yeah.
Would that be?
I guess at the very bottom, there's some
See,
bricks.
it's an emergency
Right.
situation. Yes, they said it on the.
Conseco Home is also here. It actually cost $235,000. Now, for example, here under District 4, in 2015, there's Gateway Boulevard, $275,000. And that is not happening after all. According to the last meeting, that project was scrapped, and they're gonna go with another entirely new project now, the Mexican consulate. So what happens to those $275,000?
What district?
District 4,
Does it carry over?
2015 certificate of obligation issue for 2015. At the second from the top, it says on Tomas Sanchez sculpture, 14,710. And then Gateway Boulevard project, $275,000. And we just heard Monday that that project is not gonna happen after all. They're gonna scrap it and go with another completely new idea. So what happens to those $275,000? You know, I mean, those are questions that are just up in the air. There's nothing that a citizen can go to and say, you know, what's happening here? What recourse do I have? Do I want to speak on it or anything like that? So that's one of the many problems that is involved with this.
Well, yeah, I think that if we consider putting a limit on the amount,
Yeah, no.
then,
You see, the ordinance would do that, would put a limit and would spell out a process by which it could be amended and even guidelines as to what would be appropriate, you know?
but I think perhaps it could also include it in the charter, because we really have no control over the ordinance.
I see what you mean, no, I understand.
Uh,
And so we have to
but-
stipulate it in the charter itself.
You would stipulate the amount, but you can also stipulate what happens to those funds if they're not used. And you can say, anything used at the end of the unused at the end of the fiscal year, shall revert to the general fund. Or its source, or its original source, whatever that was. Because if it was CO bonds, it would go back to CO bonds. But see, I don't know if, and I don't know if anybody here can answer this, is there a carryover if, let's say I get 500,000, but I only spend 300,000? What happens? Do I get to keep those other two in addition to an additional 500? Does anybody know that? So I guess nobody knows that from city staff right now.
No,
offhand.
sorry, no.
Okay.
What I have heard
we don't know.
Well, I've heard that you can carry it over because Congressman Alga has said that he's accumulating his for a big project.
Yeah.
You see, so I had carries over and it just keeps going on for the four. You could have up conceivably to $1.6 million, $2 million after.
Yeah. And we could propose language that would say that, any amount would revert back to its funding source or initial source of that money or something like that, because in addition to the 500,000, and then you have cumulatives, because there's one in here that I see, because the very last entry says reserve, and one of them has almost the whole 500,000 in reserve,
Yes.
which means that councilman has no plans at this point. But if they go unspent, then they'll be tacked on to another one, and we're just hoarding money that the city needs for operations and for the benefit of the community. So I think that that's something that we might want to look at. So I'm just throwing that out for additional consideration. If we do decide that we want to put some limitations, maybe look at addressing that issue as well.
Well, Judge, may I speak?
Yes, sir.
I had included under this section because I thought that the main thing that we wanted to do is require an ordinance and then give everybody a chance to chime in, right, when the ordinance. But, I don't know if there's another part of the charter that we can directly put in there what we really want. So,
Maybe under the budget.
would legal be able to help us out with that?
What was the question again? Sorry.
If we wanted to put something in the charter, directly into the charter, about the discretionary funds, what section would be amended? Or where would that fit
Where would
in?
it fit in?
Yeah.
I'm not sure right now, but I can get back to you and let you know.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Reyna is asking to be recognized.
Yes, sir, Mr. Reyna.
You should keep in mind that there's nothing stopping us from adding provisions. We're going to add this one in,
Oh, I see.
discretionary funds.
Okay.
And, it doesn't fit squarely into something else, that's not, let's fit this, we can just create it. Another point that I'd just like to make very quickly, keep in mind, all of us should keep in mind, there are two potential roadblocks to all of this. The city council has to approve all of this, right?
Of course.
If it would propose a city charter amendment, it's up to them to decide whether they're gonna put it on the ballot. And even if they pass it to the voters, the problem that would be, another roadblock would be, they're the ones who make the ordinance. Remember, they pass the ordinance unless it's done by initiative.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of, if you look at 6.04 of the charter, under budget, it says, like, for example, item number 5 says, "No funds, tax proceeds, or appropriations shall be set aside specifically for any non-city government functions." You know, there's a limitation, and I was thinking that we could have something in there by way of a limitation. And I don't know if we could do it today.
Since we didn't, we put another section, right?
Yeah, because I don't know if we could say, you know, under 6.04, add a number 6, saying there shall be no blah, 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 whatever it is that you all want to do.
Well,
Yes, sir.
being that we did not discuss, or we could not take any action on the other item that they had that was not here, I think the right way to do it would be to put it on the next item under this section that you're referring to. And at that point, we can come up with a language. I mean, that's something we can do.
Or maybe we could just, for the next meeting, have an agenda item to discuss possible action concerning the amount of discretionary funds to be allowed under the charter.
Under the charter, under 6.04, which deals with the budget.
6.1.
And the limitations there too, Your Honor. And the limitations for the
Yes.
chiefs.
And do we need to indicate what section that would be so she can?
Well, it's under, the
Just-
way I see it, it's at 6.04, but I would
I have to make sure which one it is.
defer to the city attorney.
Okay, thank you.
So with that said, we take no action on, on item A.
So we table essentially for next meeting? Bring it back up?
All right, there's a motion to table item A.
Second?
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion is tabled. The next item is proposed amendment to section 2.09B, ordinance on general procedure. Again, this, I don't know if there was recommendations from someone on this particular item.
I think I was the one who,
You did, sir?
I believe so.
The reading of the ordinance?
Yes.
The reading, yes.
Well, what I would recommend, I mean, what I would like to see is a proposal. It's in there now, but it's not being honored. Because right now, they're not reading the ordinances. When they introduce it, they go like, let's say there's ordinance 4 and 5, item 4 and 5, right? When they introduce it, they say, motion to introduce, and that's all. They introduce, it's not read. And then 2 weeks later, they come back and say, motion to waive final reading, and they don't read it at all. So what they understand right now, what I've been told, is that they're only required to read aloud items that require a public hearing, which is not everything. But my contention, the way I read the chapter, it says, no ordinance shall be read more than once, which to me means every ordinance has to be read at least once. But the way it's worded, it allows for escape. So what I would like to do is for it to indicate all ordinances must be read once upon introduction. That's what I would like to see. Because otherwise, the public has no idea what's going on. They're introduced without being read, and they're finalized without being read. So
They're
that's,
introduced in packages.
yeah,
Big
like
chunks.
like a
yeah.
big chunk, yes. And then 2 weeks later, they're waived in packages, and, in a block. So that's what I would,
You want every proposed ordinance shall be read at
upon
least
introduction.
once upon,
Introduction.
shall be read
Shall be read upon introduction.
upon introduction and.
Or shall be read aloud.
To the council.
Allowed, yeah, because there's a
Shall be
lot of
read
things
aloud.
that slip through without people knowing what they're about.
silently.
Yeah, they'll read it silently. and-
Read to themselves.
Yeah, if we look at section 8.03, and it's a slightly different variation, but it it does specify certain ordinances that need to be read. And we don't have to necessarily include it here, but some of the language perhaps is something that we could use. It says every ordinance granting, renewing, extending, or amending a public utility franchise shall be read at 3 regular meetings of the council and shall not be finally acted upon until 30 days after the first readings thereof.
Okay, so that's specifically to utilities?
It's specifically to the utilities, but some of that language
You
perhaps
could incorporate.
is some of what we could
Okay,
use for
I
all
see,
ordinances.
I see. So to apply to all ordinances?
Right. Because there is some provision there, but it's specifically for utilities, correct?
So, I mean, that's true. Ultimately, to me, the best way to do it is to have to read it twice. Now, what they started to do is waive the final reading. They got away with it, so they started to just do away with the initial reading. And so we're going the wrong direction. So, if we can make it like Mr. Sanchez said, you know, that's even better. But at the very least, I want it to be introduced, read aloud upon introduction. If anybody else wants to amend it to make it stronger, and I'm all for it.
But voice your motion specifically.
My motion is to read every single ordinance aloud upon introduction. Every ordinance must be read aloud upon being introduced.
Shall, use the
Shall
word
be,
shall.
okay. Every ordinance shall be read aloud upon being introduced, or upon introduction.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Mr. Rodriguez. Discussion. Anyone has any observations for or against the motion?
I will say a few words on that, if I may. The whole purpose here is to keep the community informed.
Correct.
And I don't see a negative at all to have these proposed ordinances be read aloud. So the whole idea is to inform the public, inform the community, the taxpayers of the ordinance, so that the public will be informed.
To that said, I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes unanimously.
Going to the thing Saturday? We're going to gathering Saturday on the.
Oh, the slum
I'll go on to item C, proposed amendment to section 10.06 on council districts. And again, staff has given us a lot of information on this, and Mr. Reyna,
Gerrymander.
probably the expert on redistricting.
I
So-
never put on anything out there, but I have a lot to say about everything.
So
Now you-
I'll hear from the members. We noticed the discrepancies in the number of population, and we agreed it was population, not voters, right?
Right.
That is right, that's what the
Yes.
Supreme Court has said.
So, the one district, for example, has a much larger population than another. And, you know, what that does is dilutes the voting strength of that overly large district. So with that said, what are your wishes?
If I may.
Yes, sir.
Not only are the districts, like what you just mentioned, that several districts are much larger than other districts, but also in registered voters and in voting activity within the district. So, do we have a copy of that information that was given to us?
The breakdown?
It was given to us last time, if
Yes,
I'm not mistaken.
I didn't bring mine, so that I can be more
I believe we
specific.
don't have it.
I believe
today,
Mr.
no.
Sanchez has.
Okay, for instance, you mentioned population, and Ms. Lorena, of course, said that that didn't, so it's not, doesn't even have to be citizens or
Voters.
even, or voters or legal residents. It's population. But within the register of voters, you have, for instance, in District 1, you have 5,000 people voting in the last election. And in District 6, you have 10,000 people voting in that election. So, and it's precisely because of that in some areas you have a lot more registered voters than in other districts, and so consequently you have council members elected in some districts with half of the votes that are required in other districts. I'm just pointing out the information that is here. So along what you were saying, that it dilutes the power of districts by that situation. It requires, in some areas, in District 8, you had 4,000 people voting, 4,188. So that's over twice and a half the 10,000. What does it mean? It just means that in some districts you have a relatively
Engaged.
you have, in some districts, you have a lot of people registered and engaged in the political process, a lot more than in other districts because they have less registered voters, and then on top of that, they turn out in lesser numbers at elections. So in some districts, it requires twice the number of votes to get elected versus other districts.
Mr. Reyna?
So you're not proposing that we,
I'm not proposing anything, I'm
oh, well,
just
you're reading
mentioning.
something for a reason, right? There's a rhyme and reason to what you're saying, right? It doesn't come out of thin air, just out of the sky. You have something in mind. And I'm asking you the question. If you're proposing that we set up single-member districts, or our districts be based on voting population rather than
No, we know that,
population.
we know that can be.
Well, then, I'm asking you, why is that relevant to this discussion?
Well, it's relevant in the sense that this is an argument, because you mentioned something in favor of single-member districts. This is an argument for having maybe half of the council or 4 council members elected at large, so that all the voters would participate in electing these people versus very few people electing a council member in some district versus a lot more people in another district.
Well, as far as I know, that's not on the agenda.
No, I know,
Okay.
but that's.
What's on the agenda is whether or not, and I think this was the issue that Judge raised last time,
Let me
that we had, and I'm not,
Let me just jump in and see if I can crystallize what the issue is, sir.
All right.
And then have more discussion.
so, you don't think I can do it? I mean, I think I can crystallize this issue as well.
All right, go ahead, sir.
You know? I think the issue that we were raising last time is whether or not we should have redistricting done in the interim, between the 10-year the census count, right? You do the census every 10 years, and that's when our districts are subject to adjustment. Adjusting the districts so that we have a more or less approximately equal population per district. Population of people, persons per district. Nothing to do with whether or not it's
I
more.
understand.
Okay?
The,
So that was a question, and we had asked that we come back with a report, information about how other, cities, jurisdictions do that. Whether there's any other jurisdiction in the nation or the state that actually does does it differently other than based on the US Census every 10 years, which is what we do here, right? And that was the issue that I thought we were addressing tonight.
I may. San Antonio, El Paso, and Houston, they can be changed after the census or anytime there's a difference in population. I can go ahead and get you guys the information typed up. But I looked at 5 cities. I looked at San Antonio, Dallas, Austin, El Paso, and Houston. San Antonio, El Paso, and Houston do have in their charter that it could be changed anytime there's a change in population, not just after the census. So it can be added to the charter.
Does it mention a threshold of disparity, like 10%, as long, in other words, I think somebody had said that if there's more than a 10% difference between any 2 districts, then automatically it has to be readjusted or something? Does it say anything to that effect?
I know the San Antonio one says other times where substantial variances in the number and makeup have occurred. It doesn't say a number. I know the Houston one says anytime city council determines it's materially unbalanced, or any year that an election is going to be held. That's in Houston. And El Paso.
But those changes are based on the official federal estimation of the population on the census, an annual estimation, is that?
No, they don't necessarily say it has to be done after the census, just depending on changes in population.
How do they determine
Yes.
that there's been a change in population? Do you know?
No, I'm not sure. I guess they do examine just the population changes within their community, but it doesn't specifically say.
There needs to be a source.
What is a change in population? I mean, from ethnic or numbers?
Number change, a number change.
I believe the U.S. Census Bureau puts out a yearly ACS, American Community Survey, and they update the populations in between the 10-year intervals. So I believe maybe it does not mention that, but I believe that could be the basis for them taking action.
What is it, more like an estimate, or based on it? They make an estimate?
I don't know how they arrive at that, but I know that I've gotten in there, and you can bring up here like 2016 ACS for Laredo, and it'll come up.
Well, they use some sort of estimate based on history, I guess.
So I don't know if it was the projections or I don't know. I really couldn't speak to that.
I'm not sure. What we would want is an ideal situation where all the districts are equal in population.
Ideally, yes.
All the other, registered voters and people that voted, we don't know. We don't know because there's too many variables. There may have been a very hotly contested election. There may have been a very good voter registration drive. So we can only guide ourselves by the population. And my question would be whether we would be able to determine, like say, every 5 years or 6 years rather than every 10 years, the population within a specific quadrant of the city. Because otherwise, how will the new districts be drawn? And so that to me is the issue. If we don't use the federal census every 10 years, will there be enough information available to be able to draw 8 districts that are equal in population?
Judge, the charter says that it has to be based on the census. But waiting 10 years may be too long a period to wait. Again, because
we keep hearing Laredo is the fastest growing city in the country. And if we wait for 10 years, we're going to continuously have those discrepancies of 35,000 people in District 6 versus 27 in District 2. So at the very least, the population factor could be alleviated by having a mid-term redistricting and not wait 10 years, but do it every 5 years, based on the latest federal estimate of the population.
But you're basing that on voters.
No.
I mean,
No, this is
you were-
population.
that's
This is-
population only?
Yes.
Because like District 1 and 2, I mean, they've just exploded. And
As we can see, there's already a large discrepancy, say, that I pointed out last time. District 6 has 35,908. And so whoever's elected for District 6 represents 35,000. But if you go to District 2, he only represents 27,000. And so the District 6 is being shortchanged.
Yeah, being diluted, right? Yeah.
But my question is, how do you accomplish the ideal situation of doing a redistricting without waiting for the federal census?
Judge?
Yes, sir?
Well, our lawyer here has just referred to San Antonio's scheme for doing it. San Antonio City, San Antonio's scheme. I don't know how long it's been in effect, but we might learn from their experience with this and how they do it. I mean, I think we don't need to invent the wheel. I think we can copycat those schemes that have worked. Obviously, they don't depend, they do it in the interim, right, between.
They can do it in the
your
interim,
census,
yes.
right? So, we had more information about that scheme and maybe others, we might be able to adopt one of those. I, for one, have no opposition whatsoever to doing it periodically, because I am one
Keep it more accurate.
advocate, for the one person, one vote principle. And so there's no problem for me on that issue. We got the other issue that I'm.
Well, because getting back to what I said a minute
Fiercely on
ago, to get elected in District 6, according to the last election, you needed 5,100 and some odd votes to have half plus one. 5,000 votes, whereas in other districts, because of lower population and other factors, you need 2,000 votes. So, yes, it's again like basically what the judge says, that it's 27,000 people get to elect one, and over here you have 35,000 people electing one. So that's not one man, one vote, right?
Suppose we have approximately equal-sized districts in the population-wise. Whether it takes 5 votes or 20,000 votes, I mean, that's not an issue.
And then, of course, you have the games that the feds play with, marking the little box whether you're a citizen or not, which means nothing.
I have a question. You said San Antonio is allowed to do it. Do you know if they actually have done it?
I'm not sure of that, no, I would need to look into that. But it does say that all of them say it has to be done at the census, or any other time where they see that there's a difference
Okay.
in the shift in population.
So that's in the city charter of San Antonio.
Yes, these are all from the city.
So is it pretty, do you have it in front of you?
My own notes.
No, you don't have the whole copy of it?
No, I don't have the whole copy.
Okay, can you get us a copy of that?
Yes,
And maybe other cities that do the same thing in Texas, like essentially larger cities, and email that to us for the next meeting?
okay.
I would move, Your Honor, that we table this to the next meeting.
Until we have more a handle on how to figure the population.
Yes, that's sources to use.
It's a motion to table again. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a second? There's no discussion on the motion to table, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? this matter is tabled until the next meeting. The last item for action is proposed amendment to section 12.02 Commission. And the staff provided us with how it's done in different jurisdictions. And I noticed, and maybe you can shed some light on this, that in some of the charters, the provision is that the mayor and the council appoint the commission, period.
Yes.
So how do they do it? Do they just pick names and submit it, how do they get the 11 members or however many there's gonna be?
Like how we got here.
Same way we do.
They're elected and then they're approved by the council, by ordinance, I would assume, similar to
We had
Laredo.
asked for staff to bring us back how other cities do it, right?
Yeah, it's here.
It's here, but I don't have a copy of it, so.
Yeah, it's
You guys did a good job.
Exactly.
There's an array of the ones, how they do it, or the provision.
Okay.
And so, like I said, some of them, they do it like we do here. Each member nominates one.
Okay.
But others just simply say the mayor and council appoint the ethics commission or the ethics review commission, whatever you call it.
It's on this one,
Yes,
it's in that.
On this one? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
And I would think if you dilute, it makes sense that if you dilute the appointment to be submitted, approved by the entire council, without the specific wording of each one nominates, then that also does away with the idea that, you're going to be loyal to the person who brought you here, which doesn't necessarily follow, as this commission has shown.
Wow.
What are your wishes on this one? I would be in favor of changing it to just say, leave it open and say, the Ethics Commission is appointed by the mayor and council, and give the number.
You're saying leave
Currently,
it the way it is?
It's 9 ethics members, 1 each.
Yes.
So maybe we can change it to 11 and muddy the waters a little bit. We already voted that the Ethics Commission has jurisdiction to consider violations of the charter.
You propose that?
And so now still the dilemma is, what's the best way to appoint an Ethics Commission that is free of any taint that people will say, well, no, they're not going to do the right thing because, this particular council member, appointed this particular.
Well, Judge, if I may play the devil's advocate here for a minute. If we got into a situation in a council where there was a majority of the council, five members that were allied, let's say, and it's conceivable that they could select the 9 or 11 members amongst themselves because they have the votes
I see.
to approve that, which right now it allows or provides for each council district to have a representative. In that scenario, it's conceivable that, just like the concern about the voters earlier, it's conceivable that not all districts will have any representation. Whether they need it or not need it, I don't know, but that seems to be the trend amongst pretty much all the appointments in the city. But if there were to be a group of a majority, what would prevent them from selecting those that would be tied to them and not to others, because then they have control of the votes, and it only takes 5 to have control of the votes.
Correct.
Well, you will recall, there was one nomination of a former city manager, and it was voted down. And so, I'm not sure exactly what the solution is. Because if that particular council member wanted that kind of representation, they told him no. And so get somebody else.
But usually that almost never happens. It was that situation, that example was, let's say.
Generally, on principles of comity, if I nominate, as a council member, I nominate a person,
Everybody will.
they're gonna approve it.
Yes.
Usually,
Yeah. Mr. Reyna, you had an observation?
Yes, yes. I think I'm following the devil's advocate. I think the devil's advocate has a point, and that's, there could be, everyone from North Laredo serving on that commission. And that's not, something out of this world. That's very, very, very possible. And, and so I'm for protecting, the representation amongst the people by district, on the commission. Ethics commission, though it be, commissioners, they may be removed for cause as well. I mean, it's not like we can. They need to be qualified to serve, and there's, certain, things that they must do to serve that office with dignity, honor, and respect, and do the things they have to do. So, I'm all for putting some type of oversight, process into those commissions and how, commissioners and how they operate, or the commission how it operates. But I'm not following this whole notion that let the council as a whole appoint its members.
What about, just since we're kind of looking at all of these cities doing it the same way, and what about the city council gets to appoint, but the applicants are from the community? He's probably going to end up still appointing whoever he wants to, right? But at least you open it up a little bit, unless we make it that the community from each district applies and then they're drawn. That would be sort of, then you're just going with, it could be different people. It wouldn't be necessarily the one that the council says is its top pick. But I'm just bringing that up because we're kind of seem to be out of ideas as far as when we're looking at the other cities. All it says is simply that the council and the mayor appoints them all. So, with no other provisions.
We could say that the council appoints 9 members to the Ethics Commission with a limitation that they must all come from within a different district.
Or the
That would
district,
guarantee that,
the district of the councilman. Instead of saying, but it's got to represent the council district.
Like maybe right
the members of the commission are all fine, upstanding citizens. I'm just trying to sanitize it so that they don't get undue criticism when they make a decision.
I agree.
Well,
Yeah, but as a council person, you would think you would, and having the restriction that it has to be within your district, it'd be, now what they do once they get together like we do, it's hard to predict, but that would also make sure that South Laredo has as many representatives on the board as does the North Laredo. because you know we're in a civil war.
Someone knows there's gonna be a wall built between them.
In the Saunders.
Jared is here.
So we're fighting a difficult battle here. Are there any motions that anyone wants to make, or should we just leave it alone?
I think some of the council would be hard pressed to find a representative. For example, I'm sitting with Mr. Rodriguez's seat, but I do not live in his district. Just couldn't find anybody that was willing to serve on this commission. So, I don't know.
Because I tend to agree with what, I would favor that each district have representation, that the council member appoints somebody from within his district. But in their district to,
That's what I was told, so when I got the phone call.
that's another situation.
I don't even know Mr. Rodriguez. Personally.
So what do you think about that, Mr. Reina? Because I agree with you that the district should be represented in every.
There can always be a default mechanism to cover the lack of, let's say, that there's a genuine search for somebody in that district. Right? And, I mean, I don't know how we're gonna be able to safeguard the process, you know, making sure that that actually is what happened. Maybe there's a need to say, hey, open it up. All those who want to serve on this commission, you know, go apply here. You have actually applications. I mean, that could, I think most of the time, like, how many of us just got a call, right, to serve? Somebody picked up the phone, give you a call. You want to be on the commission?
Pretty close.
Right?
Like in my case, I don't reside within the district of the councilman that nominated me for this.
It's just
Yo
same
tampoco.
case with-
I don't either.
I don't either.
Likewise.
So then, how many are from the district? I'm from my district.
That was-
Out of 8, half and half.
I wasn't appointed at large, though.
So, I guess what you just said, that make provisions for in cases of where they can't find anybody or
Right.
is willing to serve.
Right now, it does obviously provide for that, since half of us don't live in the district, half of us do. I mean, that pretty much is the way it's functioning at this point. I mean, for this commission, and of course it would function the same way for the Ethics Commission, I haven't heard anything really compelling to say, let's make a change, because it seems like it's not perfect, but it seems like almost workable.
So for every board and every commission, the member doesn't have to reside in the district to be appointed to represent that council person.
I don't believe so, no.
I think Councilwoman Vielma brought it up in one of the council meetings. She insisted that the members resided in the council person's district, but it fell through. It didn't.
Yeah, I know it used to be that way previously, that you had to be appointed, you could only be appointed if you resided in the district, and then sometime back, for whatever reason, probably because maybe some couldn't find, I don't know what the reason was, but then they changed it to where you don't have to. Whether that applies to all commissions and committees, I don't really know, but.
Yeah, the only resident requirement on that one as well, so now it's all open, you know, anybody can serve on anyone.
I think it's hard to find commission members, to wit, the Utilities Commission, you know, have people complain about the water, and they can't even get a quorum for the Utilities
Yeah.
Commission.
That's true.
They're all sick all the time.
Yeah, it's, they didn't boil their water. No.
So we leave it alone? That's consensus?
I'm okay with that.
Let them,
Reluctantly, yes.
just bear the brunt then.
Half an hour.
Laredo. A nice place to visit, just don't drink the water.
Did you say don't drink the water, Ian?
Huh?
Was that about the boil water
But
notice?
they told us not to.
Are you raising that issue here?
Oh, this is boiled. Anything that, I'm going on to item number 6. The commission may discuss and identify future agenda items, topics, or presentations. Do you want to suggest anything other than what we have, what we tabled? By the council previously?
Just a reminder, which ones are the ones we're gonna take up again next time?
From department directors would be 6.04,
Okay,
nepotism. We tabled 2.08
mhm.
and 10.06.
Okay, but one of them, we were gonna look at the budget, right? Instead of the 2.08,
Yes.
we were gonna look at 6.
Yes, 6.04 with the budget.
Thank you.
And it was 12.04 with the nepotism.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to suggest that perhaps we might be able to receive from staff a summary of the actions, well, the items that have been considered with the final action for each one, just so we can have a guide of what we've done, what the item was, a charter item, and then what the final outcome was, whether it was a
That's an
promotion
excellent
or a
idea.
table or
Do you
whatever.
think you could give us a summary of the items that we've already voted on to submit to council for
Up to this point.
consideration?
For next time? Yes.
Thank you.
And not a criticism, but could we be served on the internet? Could you email us a copy of the agenda and the minutes,
Okay.
a few days before?
Yes. How many days before would you like it? When it's posted?
When you post it, when you
When it's
post
Or when it's
Yeah,
ready?
72 hours.
Uh,
Judge, and include some of this information that we should be able to read in advance of the meeting and not at the meeting.
Yeah,
okay.
so we don't read it when we get here.
Like those reports and stuff.
Well,
yeah.
ideally, I would want that, but I know they're busy and they've got other things. But yes, if you could provide us with any documents that you're gonna give to us at the same time you give us the agenda and the minutes.
Okay.
Any other observations? Use your freedom of speech that we are granted by the American dream.
There's also retaliation for whistleblowers, Your Honor, under the American system. Okay, and so we have to understand that free speech, is free speech, under the Constitution, but that it has its repercussions, and that we should be prepared to.
Can you take your tongue out of your cheek?
I haven't.
I can read it.
Good. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Since this is the November meeting technically, what is the
Oh,
next
yes.
meeting?
Yeah.
In December? or
Would you
January?
want to skip the next meeting? We're getting close to Christmas holidays, everybody in the Christmas spirit, and wait until January?
Fine with me.
And have double in January, or we're just not gonna have December?
Just not have-
Well, as you know, we didn't have the November one, and this is a special meeting.
Mhm.
Theoretically, we would meet again on the, what is it, the third Wednesday
of January?
of December.
Oh, yes,
And it's
technically.
too soon.
Normally, yes.
Give the staff a break, and I'm not in any hurry. We're gonna work and work and work.
Yeah, go to January.
Let's go to January, okay, it's understood then. There will be no regular meeting for December, but we will expect a regular meeting the third Wednesday in January. God willing, we'll all be here.
Already.
Judge, those of us that have proposals can submit items for that meeting or not in advance?
Yes, sir. If you have anything that you want on the agenda, we normally vote on it, but, you know, we can be sort of lax on that. Send it to the city attorney, or it's the city attorney, right?
Yes, city attorney.
Not the city secretary.
Thank you.
So we can email it, anything that we come up between now and next time, we can email it directly to
If you all have my email, of course,
copy you on that.
send me something.
Thank you.
There being no further business to discuss, motion and a second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned until next meeting in January.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.